Good day everyone, my name is Zipporah El Bagyo and now we will discuss the steps for unpacking curriculum standards and competencies. So there are 4 steps in unpacking curriculum standards and competencies. So the first step is to classify standards as knowledge, skills, and values. So from the very beginning, we always encounter these 3. These are what we use in making lesson plan objectives with its 3 domains, which we call cognitive, affective, and the psychomotor domain. So the knowledge or cognitive domain is used if the learning competency calls for remembering and basic comprehension of a concept or a skill. So knowledge includes the ability of the learners to recall data or information, then is followed with comprehension, which assesses the ability of the learner to understand the meaning of what is known. So examples of knowledge that can be seen in learning objectives are the following. Number 1, discuss the different forms of government or analyze the importance of water for living organisms. Discuss the rules in subject-verb agreement, and lastly, define percentage. So now, let's go to the next, which is the values. So the values or the affective domain, this is used if the learning competency calls for valuing and appreciation. So valuing involves the ability to see the worth of something and express it. So this includes the ability of the learner to solve their views and ideas about various issues raised in class. So some examples of values are appreciate various forms of literature, recognize the importance of cooperation and unity in achieving goals, respect the different national symbols of the country, and lastly, appreciate examples of Baroque music. So lastly is the skill or the psychomotor domain. This is used if the learning competency calls for the learner to demonstrate or apply a skill or designed behavior. With this, learners should have the ability to perform a task and knows the process, operations, and practical applications or procedures and problem solvings. So some of the examples that includes the skills are as follows. Calculate cost of production, plan a menu, solve word problem, and calculate the mean and median. So we need to classify the knowledge, skills, and values in unpacking curriculum for the teachers to be able to adapt a teaching strategy that will combine the 3 and enables teaching and learning effective. It would also help the teachers to identify the different learning strategy of the students. Now let's go to the step 2 for unpacking curriculum standards and competency. So this is to identify the prerequisite knowledge, skills, and values for each learning competency. Prerequisite, based on a Latin verb, requirere, means to need or require. So a prerequisite can be anything that must be accomplished or acquired before something else can be done. So in education, a prerequisite means a course or other requirement that a student or learner must have taken before proceeding to the next level. So a learner must need to know or understand first before learning or understanding something new. So in step 2, we need to identify the prerequisite knowledge, skills, and values for each learning competency so that we as teacher will know if the learners are ready to proceed to the next topic. So for example, we cannot teach the students subtraction if they have not yet mastered the addition. So the prerequisite could serve as instructional objectives for the lesson. Now let's proceed to the step 3. It is to look for the desired skills or behavior in every competency and identify the most suitable activity for each desirable behavior. So as a teacher, we should know how to meet a student's needs. And in order for it to happen, the teacher should identify or give students a suitable activity that will line up with the lesson. So for example, the lesson is all about arts in MAPE and the activity is to create crafts that can be locally assembled with local materials guided by local traditional techniques. For example, hobby, lilip, and etc. So the desired behavior or skill in this learning competency is for the students to create crafts assembled with local materials guided by the local traditional techniques. So this could be done through the following activities. Number 1 is the lecture workshop and the number 2 is the project-based approach. So what is a lecture workshop? So this is where the teacher will discuss and explain about the crafts to be done. In lecture workshop activity, the teacher will discuss the procedure of how to do it, the background history of the craft, and the importance of it to the community. This is a traditional way of learning in which the teacher will discuss while the students will listen and take down notes. Now let's proceed to the project-based approach. So this is where the learners will apply the things that they have learned during the lecture workshop activity. The teacher can choose if the activity can be done individually or by group. With this approach, the teacher will see if the students learned from the discussion. This will also test their ability to communicate and cooperate and have unity with one another if the activity is by group. Now for the last step, which is step number 4. It is to classify the learning competencies to determine appropriate assessment tools. So this process is based on the works of Glathorn in 1998. So there are 3 assessment tools. These are the Standard with Conventional Testing or the SCT, Standard with Performance Task or the SPT, and the Standard for Continuing Development, which is the SCD. So the SCT or Standard with Conventional Testing these are the learning competencies that require traditional assessment tools like quizzes and exam. So this is more like a traditional assessment tool which evaluate what skills students can perform. This will determine if the students mastered the content. So this includes traditional type of tests like multiple choice, short answer essays, and standardized tests. Examples of SCT or the Standard with Conventional Testing is describe the characteristics of sounds, identify the primary colors, discuss the judicial system in the Philippines, and explain different communication models. Now for the SPT or the Standard with Performance Task, these are learning competencies that require performance tasks for assessment or authentic assessment. So performance activities results in measurable product or performance that serve as evidence of learning. Unlike in SCT or the Standard with Conventional Testing that asks students to select from alternatives, a performance task presents a situation that calls for learners to apply their learning in context. Examples of SPT or the standard with performance task is perform examples of Philippine folk dance, write an essay about the selected topic, demonstrate how to dissect an insect, and paint using natural and indigenous materials. Lastly is the SCD or the Standard for Continuing Development. So these are competencies that focus on values and attitude that cannot be assessed. So examples of SCD is to recognize basic human rights of a person, appreciate the role of mathematics in everyday life, develop a healthy eating habits, and respect different cultural practices. So the result of classifying these three assessment tools will help the teachers identify the nature of competency and the type of assessment tools to be used for measuring the student's performance for every competency. So it is important that the assessment tools are aligned to the curriculum competencies. That is all for the steps for unpacking curriculum standards and competencies. So the next reporter is Miss Biboso.